Hi everyone, Congressman Blake Moore here. Love getting feedback on our newsletter, and this is one of those additional areas that we wanted to enhance starting at the first of this year. Creating some just brief videos. We'll come up with a catchy name for it soon. You can suggest one. But I want to come up with some simple ways to communicate some of the important things going on back here. And today I wanted to talk about two brief things. One is our debt to GDP. That ratio is a very important indicator for our overall economic health and the direction that our budgeting is going, and then highlight a really specific trend that's going on in our budgeting process. So I'm going to use a whiteboard. My team makes fun of me for it, but I do hope it helps to be able to visualize some of this. That's how I know how it helps me. So when I talk debt to GDP, that's simply the amount of debt we have as a nation as a percentage of our overall sort of national economic health. Debt, gross domestic product, just as an indicator for our economic output. And that's always been a key indicator for people to be able to watch and, at this point, sound the alarm. So as you look here, in 1946, it's as highest that it's ever been, at 106%. And for context, most experts and economists get very nervous when this gets over 70%. So a 0.7 debt to GDP is the level that we want to be able to, it would be great to be able to get to a 0.7, but we've been a lot lower than that in the past, and that's where it becomes healthier. So high numbers are definitely bad, and we had a higher debt than what our GDP was actually putting out at 106%, and that's something that, as we look at the graph now, 2022, we're at 98%. And in my debt and deficit task force, my recommendations, I've used varying figures. Sometimes you use gross debt to GDP and those numbers are higher, but they remain, when you're talking apples to apples here, 106% to 98%, we are basically at where we were at World War II levels. Now the positive thing is, we made some changes, we were able to address it, our economy grew, and after World War II, we got this down to a very sustainable levels, in the 20s and 30%. We had balanced budgets during that time over the course of 10 or 15 or so years. Our last balanced budget was when I was graduating Ogden High School in the late 90s. And that's been 25 years, and that's the part that's very concerning to me, is we have not been able to get our deficits under control. And something that I'm very focused on and working on, and why I want to be on the committees that I'm on to hit this most important issue. But we're now to the point where we are getting to World War II levels. We have not had a World War II catastrophic event. Really, one of the key reasons is you look, when things started to really grow, and our debt started to really grow, was in 2008. And that's when a big retirement surge happened. But we knew that was going to happen. And what we weren't able to do was best plan for that time frame. And that's come and gone. The key is for lawmakers now to realize the situation we're in and what we need to be able to do about it, so we see this trend happen and not what is likely to happen if we don't do anything. And that's what we want to do when we talk about our debt ceiling negotiations leading up to this summer, is make sure we can find ways to improve and make changes there. And that's the key piece. So I hope that's helpful. The next piece I want to briefly talk about is a specific trend in our budgeting process. When you look at the U.S. national budget, let's just put it in two pie charts. You have three main areas of this. You have mandatory spending, you have non-defense discretionary spending, and then you have defense spending, which is part of the discretionary budget. So mandatory, defense, and let's call it non-defense. In 1965, sorry about that, in 1965, 34% of our budget was mandatory, 43 was defense, and the remaining part, 23, was non-defense discretionary. That's a healthy mix of what a budget looked like 50 years ago. Now the problem is the mandatory spending, those are the programs that get put on autopilot where we as lawmakers don't actually address them each year. We mostly vote on the discretionary world, the defense and non-defense discretionary. We don't always vote on the mandatory programs. Today, 50 years later, the mandatory budget has grown to 71, which I apologize, that's a very bad depiction of what 71% is. It grew from 34 to 71 over 50 years. It slowly ticks up and it slowly goes in that direction. And that is the fundamental reason we're having a tough time getting these deficits under control. These are important programs. They're tough programs to address, but over the course of the last 50 years, we just haven't done enough to get them in the right direction. And the part that's most concerning, particularly to the 1st District of Utah, is our defense budget went from 43% of our total defense, or our total budget, down to 13, right? And so that is as mandatory budgets continue to grow and grow and grow, our defense budget actually shrinks. People get worried about the high number of our defense. Our defense budget is a high number, but it is becoming a smaller and smaller portion of our overall spend, and that's something that's concerning to me, is because we don't have the resources we need to make sure we invest in things related to defense and other programs. This trend from 34 to 71 is a tough thing to solve, but that's what we have to be willing to do. That's what will help us go from the potential up and to the right on that graph and getting it back into a lower debt to GDP ratio. So I hope this helps a little bit. This is something we'll continue to do. We want to continue to share some of these tidbits as we keep navigating all the important things going on back in Congress. So thanks for listening.